Hello, welcome to Journey. My name is Shaq Plays, and I'm joined with Eric.
Hello, guys.
We just went and saw the movie The Creator, which literally just got released today here in Australia. And what a movie it was! Certainly was a bit of a surprise. What was your initial feelings when you're going in to see this movie, Eric?
Yeah, like it's been a long time since the standout original sci-fi movie has been released into the theater. What was the last time you've seen this scale of movie? Probably June, yeah. I mean, it kind of surprised me for the kind of scale of movie that's been released in the theater. So yeah, overall, I can enjoy it all the way through the movie.
Absolutely. This was high quality visuals. Yep, some decent story there, and obviously a very important theme, I guess, considering the technological times that we are living in today, or this time period. Yeah, I was just, I guess, generally speaking, I was just impressed by the visuals. The CGI looked great. Uh, the acting was fantastic. And yeah, it really was a bit of a standout. We haven't seen a movie sort of this quality, certainly visually, in a while. So yeah, I was certainly surprised. So I guess if we try and get into a bit more detail about the creator, um, did you just want to explain the different acts, how it was sort of set up?
Yeah, sure. Surprisingly, the movies are already divided into separate acts. Like for us, they've been included subtitles for different arcs of the movie. They've been implemented into the movie. So sort of kind of separate different arcs for us for the audience to make all things clear for us. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've always been used to sort of seeing three acts: an act one, an act two, and an act three. Whereas I think in our discussions and what we just witnessed on the screen, we sort of identified four acts, where there was an introduction and then three chapters the last chapter, obviously including the conclusion to the movie. So I guess the four acts that we sort of identified obviously was a significant introduction that was, depending on opinion, was kind of rushed. Then we had the second act, which was labelled The Child. And we had the third act that was labelled The Friend. And then the fourth act being the concluding act, which was labelled The Mother.
True.
Yep. Did you want to give a breakdown of what you felt of particularly the first act?
Yeah, let's start with the first act first. So basically, the first arc it's about the background storytelling. To let us know what's what about the movie, like what's happening before and after. Basically, short scenes about going through the history of the AI intelligence advancement. Up to the point where the nuclear bombs explode in Los Angeles and it's turned down into the gutter. Yeah. So it's a very basic introduction of the movie. Yeah, like Shaq's been said, it's kind of rushed at the same wise. They just not talk too much about the reasons of the nuclear bombs, which is the one big hint of why there's a conflict between the AI and the human. Which they didn't give too much explanatory about the reasons. Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah, and as you were saying, so the introduction was obviously what I felt was rushed. Obviously, they showed some clips of, I guess, maybe a bit of a harmonious society, and then suddenly there's this massive disaster with a nuclear bomb going off in Los Angeles. And then we just suddenly see a clip of some old footage of what I'm guessing is a, five-star military general, basically identifying who the enemy is, in this case being the artificial intelligence. They're also known as synths or synthetics, maybe synths for short, and basically just declaring that, and they do actually show it. It's actually called the U.S. Military is going to go after AI anywhere on the planet, and they've just basically said that's the direction for humanity, and if this does not happen, the AI and the synths will take over and wipe out humanity. And yeah, just I guess with the introductory act, it was rushed because obviously after that bit, then we go into just a bit of the story. The main protagonist being his name is Joshua, played by the very talented John David Washington, who we've seen him before in the movie Tenet. He's certainly making a name for himself in this space. We just sort of jump into his his introduction and his story there. Did you want to explain a bit more about what you saw in the introductions, or if we want to move on to the next act?
Probably just move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just moving on then. So obviously it's a bit of a brief and very fast introduction into Joshua's story. I mean, again, the cinematography, the CGI effects of the synths was amazing. I was really impressed.
Yeah.
That's what really appealed to me. Seeing I know, obviously not necessarily a good thing, but seeing the nuclear explosion, I'm just sort of comparing that to what we saw in, for example, Oppenheimer, that used practical effects. I must admit, CGI just looks better on screen. These CGI explosions of the nuke look amazing, even though they look fake. But they look amazing, and look, lots of props to what we saw in Oppenheimer with the practical effects. But I was really impressed and stunned by what it actually looks like, what CGI can do. So I guess really quickly, just a bit about the story. So it was rushed. Joshua's sort of background. He's obviously, like a military person. He's actually lost some limbs, so he's got some robotics attached to him, robotic arm and leg. So there's also the talented Gemma Chan, who's playing another very significant role, called Maya. So shows the loving couple, Maya and Joshua. Maya's pregnant. At first, I must admit, I thought, was Maya meant to be AI? But it didn't look like at the beginning there. That was the original human Maya, I believe.
The male protagonist was the AI.
Yeah, and even that because of the limbs and the prosthetics. Yeah. Correct. And so there was a few assumptions there, mainly because, as we talked earlier, it felt very rushed. Didn't really give much of a backstory of their introductions. Then we see, unfortunately, they're in this sort of hideout, I guess, beachside resort or house, and they were attacked by actual synths, a synth army. I thought initially it might have been the US Army, but it was actually the synth army. But they weren't actually attacking Joshua or Maya. They were actually protecting them from the US Army.
From the US Army.
That had come ashore.
Like actually, Joshua is actually the spy.
Yeah, that's right.
The AI side of the world.
Right.
Yeah, that's why they were separating.
Yeah, so that's right. That's how it's so, and this is why we're sort of having this debate, is that because it was so rushed, we didn't really know who was on whose side and all that until later on. Yeah. But when the US Army was invading this or infiltrating this particular island, we didn't know that Joshua was on the side of them initially, and then he later on revealed that he was actually a spy. Or undercover. I think he actually used the word undercover. Which then, unfortunately, obviously Maya heard that, and she felt very betrayed. She was pregnant as well, and it just sort of gets rushed again. There's obviously some action there. Just leads to, unfortunately, the tragic events of Maya's death as she tries to escape on a boat. And we should talk about some impressive hardware that the US military has. Did you want to talk about, I guess, the weapon in the sky?
Yeah, the monstrosity from the sky, the Nomad is.
That's it.
The first introduction of the Nomad actually surprised me. Like, it looks very cool.
It looked like, I thought this was out of Halo or like Star Wars or something like that. Like, it looked amazing.
Because it's built meant to be scared by the enemies. So it looks just like awesome from the screen.
True, I was very impressed. It was surprising how they introduced it. It was this large, like, scanning technology of the land and terrain. I'm thinking, where is this come from? It's literally just scanning the terrain, and then you suddenly look up and you see this absolute beast of a. Initially, I thought it was a Star Destroyer from Star Wars, but that's what it looks like. This massive military installation in the sky, spaceship basically called Nomad. So this was just impressive tech. The CGI looked amazing. The way it operates and works, it was very daunting and intimidating for people, even like villagers, or village people on the ground. Just to look up, it's just this intimidating sight, isn't it? So yes, obviously, just sort of ending the beginning. So obviously, Nomad is after the creator. So we found out in the credits that the creator in the Nepalese language is called Nimata. Yeah. So I guess the two sides, obviously, being the humans and the synths, ever since this war started, the US Army is trying to find this Nimata.
Yeah.
And they didn't know who it was. They thought it was a male human being.
Yeah.
And then, as we get into it, we find out who it actually was. So I guess the result of this, and again, it's been rushed, but we see Joshua's character with military personnel. This is about 5 years later after the major explosion caused by the Nomad that actually kills the human Maya. Yeah. And then we see him sort of wake up, and then he's again drafted really quickly back into the military. They get him on an operation to try and find this Nimata, and they raid a base, a military installation. Did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so it's basically just actions, like all the way through from ratings to finally find out the actual weapons that they built by the Nimata is actually the kid, or should I say the kid faced by AI.
Yeah.
So things. Yeah, we initially have no idea what it is, because based on the introduction of the kids, it's just like sitting in a corner and watching TVs, and that's about it. Looks innocent at all and whatnot. Yeah, but soon, as the story turns out, it is very powerful AI that could almost control like anything, like technology-wise. Yeah, and basically, that's probably makes it to the end of the first arc.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So then we find out that this is actually the weapon that the US military can't find, because they believe that this weapon, who we find out is the child, and that's literally the name of the second act, can literally take out Nomad. And if they feel that if Nomad is taken out, then the AI could literally win the war and wipe out humanity. So that's obviously all fear mongering and jingoism from that, from that military side. But obviously, it was quite a shock. We were expecting maybe something like Skynet from Terminator. That's been done a million times. But to see something different, like a child, and I must admit, seeing the CGI again, the back of the child, it was amazing. The CGI in this movie really, I can't really fault it. It is so compelling that it looks so real. It was just amazing, and you'll see a lot of this sort of scenery of different AIs and how they look on screen. It truly is such a good job. Here. And so, yes, obviously, so the second act is actually called The Child. Did you want to go through that? I think it's just more of a, like you said, there's a lot of action, a lot of military. Eventually, I guess what happens if we sort of skip forward a little bit, so Joshua eventually finds the child, helps the child escape.
So basically, the second part of the arc is just basically like the relationship between like Joshua and the child, which is called Alfie.
Yeah, Alfie, that's right. Played by Madeline Una Voiles. Yeah.
Just like the relationship between these two these two personnel and how they react to each other and how they react to other things. How they escape from the chase and all that. To build up a relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I should just mention as well. So obviously there's another. So one of the military, I guess, senior staff members of the U.S. Army is played by Allison Janney. We've known her in other roles. She plays Colonel Howell in this movie. So she does a pretty good role. She's obviously has a very personal story that she told to Joshua as to why she's really invested in this mission against the AI. And I thought her acting was actually pretty good. She played a very tough sort of female general, which was good to see on screen there. So I guess so that basically covers Act 2, where we see Joshua and Alfie being the child sort of escaping from that lab. And then it's because Joshua is, I guess, obsessed with trying to be reunited with his wife. And obviously, so they go on this journey of trying to find the wife, and he's obviously looking after the child because he can't come to terms with trying to end the life of this child based on the wishes of the U.S. military, as Colonel Howell was trying to get him to do. So now we move on to the third act, which is called The Friend. So this is more a time when Joshua and Alfie, they make it to, I guess it's like another, like it's how they explain it is like another sort of city or another like part of the world where human beings and AI are actually living together harmoniously. Exactly. Which I was actually quite surprised at the terminology used to describe that, given just obviously geopolitical things in the time that we sort of live in. But that's where the friend is actually called Drew, and he's played by Sturgill Simpson. He's sort of running like this. It's almost like a sweatshop for manufacturing AIs, and they're actually manufacturing bodies and doing repairs and mods, if you can call it. So Joshua shows Alfie off to Drew, and Drew is obviously shocked when he does a bit of his own investigation, and he actually declares that Alfie is like the most advanced AI he's ever seen, and quite surprised that Alfie can actually, even though in child form, will actually be able to grow and grow more powerful. As you mentioned earlier, the fact that Alfie can actually control all technology just with her own powers. Sorry, so Alfie's actually a female child in this movie. So I guess how did you find the third act then? I guess it was sort of like a side mission for Joshua, but obviously part of the story of Joshua trying to find out what Alfie can do for him in finding the mom.
The third arc is basically more of an introduction about the new Asia side of the world, because the whole movie has a very deep layer of the storytelling as well as the world story design wise. So they got New Asia, and the third art of the story is basically it's like the introduction of how the world's being done, how the AI world's being created. How it's going to work as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And just showing that in that place called New Asia, like actually human beings were getting along with what they call synths, the AI, and they were actually, the human beings were defending the synths, saying that they have bigger hearts, and you can't beat AI because they have bigger hearts than anything humanity can offer, and obviously directed at the military. So Drew, I guess going back to the story, so Drew helps out. Drew is shocked initially, and then obviously tries to help out Joshua. So there's obviously a scene where Drew's, I guess, sweatshop or building gets raided by. So this is a bit surprising because the AI are trying to find the child, and the U.S. military is trying to find the child.
Yes, trying to find Joshua.
Yeah, and they're trying to find Joshua because they know Joshua has the child. So there's a raid on Drew's facility, I guess, his building, and then so Joshua and Alfie, and even Drew, to a degree, they all escape from that raid. They survive that. So obviously, hot on the tail, Colonel Howell and her assistant called McBride, played by Mark Menchaca. Sorry if I'm saying the name incorrectly. And also Sergeant Bui, played by Amar Chadha Patel. So they raid his Drew's apartment. Unfortunately, they kill Drew's AI partner. So there's obviously a bit of a tragedy there, but eventually Drew and Alfie and Joshua, they make it out and they head out there. I guess so. They have a tracker that was actually built into a ring, and that actually surprisingly leads them back to the island. That how the movie. Yeah, so it sort of runs around in circles a little bit. But I guess it kind of works, just given all the action happening on screen and the special effects.
It was a decoy.
Exactly.
All the clues that leads back to the original point where Joshua, separated with Maya. But it's just like coincidental.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then that kind of leads into the final act called The Mother. So they're trying to find, in that there is a tragic ending for Drew. And in his final breaths, Drew actually mentions that the reason why the US military were trying to raid where Joshua and Maya were was because they had intel that Maya was actually Nirmata, the creator, and not her father. We haven't actually talked about. There's a elder called Harun, played by Ken Watanabe. He has quite a significant role. He's obviously on the side of the synths, the AI. During the conversations, he mentions that the nuclear bomb that happened in Los Angeles wasn't actually caused by the synths, but it was done by human error and coding error. But then the synths got blamed, and then the hatred towards AI and this war started from that. I believe Harun is actually an AI synth copy of Maya's father. So when the original father of Maya existed, he was actually Nirmata. But before he died, he put all his knowledge into his daughter, Maya, and that's when Maya became the Nirmata. And that was the intel that the US military had, and that's why they actually raided where Joshua and Maya were staying at the beginning of the movie. So that's found out, and then obviously Joshua is a bit shocked, obviously, doesn't realise that Maya was actually Nirmata the whole time. And then, yes, obviously, from what I saw on screen, the fourth act was covering a lot of ground, and it was really rushed, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about the fourth act?
The fourth act, so it could conclude from Joshua entering a temple and shut down Maya's living machines.
Yes. So that was a bit of shock that we found out that Maya was actually somehow still alive but in a coma that unfortunately she never woke up from. Sorry, go on.
It's only subsisting by the machine, and like for some reason Joshua decided to turn it off. And the moment it turned off,
because the synths can't actually, they're built into the programming, they can't actually this is a bit of sort of inconsistent with what was happening in the movie, but the synths there, at least in the temple, they couldn't actually turn off because it was against their programming to harm a human being. Sorry, yep.
Okay. By the time they turned it off, the US Army is discovered this place and
so Colonel Hal, Allison Jennings' character, so she rocks up because obviously Joshua's found the child and they're all there and together, and she's literally trying to do a scan of Maya before she passes away, and get any intel from her there. And she's obviously obsessed with actually wanting to end the child, Alfie.
After a hassle, General Cal get killed.
Yep.
And Joshua and Alfie got taken away by the US Army.
Yep.
Back to their base, and
So they get separated?
Yeah, separated, and there's already like decided to shut down Alfie with Furl.
Yep.
Yeah, and by the time the whole story speeds kind of go crank up from
Yeah,
crank,
absolutely. I was shocked at the pace of what was happening in the fourth act.
Yeah, just from the moment they start like on the ambulance or whatever car it is, and to the to the Nomad, it's like spend 5 minutes.
They hijack a plane. This is like in turbo mode, and it's very very shocking what was happening in such a short space of time. Yeah. So
I thought you were gonna leave to the end of sequel. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And they had a lot of opportunity to do that.
I know there's a lot there's a lot covering story wise. Yeah. And I think this kind of the rush for the final part.
Absolutely. So this final part, is probably. So I mean, obviously, up until this point, we were still engaged in the story, the way it was presented. It just felt like all the previous acts, apart from the first act. So Act 2 and Act 3, the child and then the friend, was actually done quite well. There was good pacing, and then good action and that. And then suddenly the fourth act is sort of like in turbo mode. Maybe they never got an approval for a sequel, or I don't know. But they just try to fit in too many things all at once, and then try to get a conclusion. And unfortunately, when that happens, as we've seen in other movies, the storyline goes by the wayside, and some ridiculous things that happen on screen. For example, yes, as we were mentioning, Joshua and the child Alfie, they're on a plane to the moon.
Yeah.
Well, they escaped the military facility because they staged the death of Alfie. They staged it initially.
Yeah.
So that was all done for a chance to escape, and then they managed to escape. And then they boarded a plane that they eventually hijacked because obviously of Alfie's powers, and they found themselves suddenly on Nomad itself. So this all happened in the space of about 2 minutes, and it was just such a rush. And but this is where the story kind of
the climax.
but it kind of declined a little bit, like in quality. But and then some of the ridiculous scenes we saw of the child entering Nomad, and what did we see that we found a bit strange?
It turns out that the whole Nomad is just a child's playground. Like it just goes snuggly in everywhere he placed it. Yeah.
I was like, "Where's the security?
There's no security.
Where's the security? It's you've been the literal weapon. The generals and all the security know that the child, being the weapon, has now boarded Nomad, and there's no security. The child is literally running through the corridors. No security, just a couple of security doors getting closed and not allowing security to come in. But that's a bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
On a military installation in the sky with the advanced capabilities of such a spaceship, basically. That's where it kind of sort of the quality started degrading a bit. And then you've got Joshua doing a spacewalk. From missile to missile, because Nomad was set to launch missiles to destroy AI bases on Earth. It just got a bit sort of doing spacewalks and things, which I don't know if was needed or necessary, but they had to show how Joshua put some bombs around Nomad. I don't know how he does it on his own with supposedly a facility that's meant to have so much security, but anyway. So then we get to a point where they're successful. The child makes it to the center point where using the child Alfie uses her powers and literally shuts down the power of the entirety of Nomad.
Yeah.
And yes, some missiles still got launched and did destroy some bases on Earth, but the majority of the missiles weren't released. And all they'll just flashbacks back to the control center of Nomad, and there's just sort of tech bros on computers, just sort of panicking and not really doing anything.
Yeah.
And the military general guy just sort of yelling at people, and they're all sort of looking at each other funny, going, "What's going on?"
Yeah, it's a classic like playing dumb by the antagonist,
Correct. It's like plot armor is like turned up to 1 million for like Joshua and the child Alfie.
I know.
And literally plot armor decreased suddenly for the entirety of the American military in the climax of this movie. It's just I was suddenly, it's such a good story, kind of getting ruled on screen for me really sort of, would put my score down a little bit after seeing that. So, yes, we do have eventually a happy ending, I guess, for the synths, the AI. Yes, the AI technically sort of do win because they do bring down Nomad. Special effects look good for the explosions and all that, obviously, big scale on a big screen. And then we just suddenly end the movie, I guess, with celebrations of Back on Earth of AI celebrating that Nomad is down and destroyed.
Yeah.
And that's how the movie ends.
It's the thing that, like, turn down the Nomad is meaning the win of the war.
Pretty much, that's the significance of it. Yeah, it's just, I mean, there's so much, maybe with a bit more stronger writing to how to conclude this, or like you said, I liked your idea of potentially setting this up for a sequel. I think if it had an opportunity for another movie and maybe go a bit even more bigger scale, again, you can probably take it in multiple directions. This had the potential of even being a trilogy of its own because it's not part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's not part of DC.
Yeah,
this is its own original story of sci-fi with AI. So,
I mean, the AI concept is not the original.
Not that original, but the way this is presented, was quite unique in that sense. But yes, I can see what you mean there. There's obviously elements of Terminator, for example, elements of just other sort of sci-fi AI stories that we've seen.
Talk about AI.
That's right. That's a lot of comparisons.
Just like sway.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of the topic,
Definitely.
They just never try to go too depth about the topics.
Definitely.
They really just focus on, basically just black and white of the movie. They really have zero grounds of the gray areas. Probably the protagonist Joshua is the only spots for the gray areas.
That's right.
He's the undercover of the U.S. Army, but at the same
but then conflicted.
He's conflicted.
Yeah.
Into the synth side.
Synth side, and he becomes very sympathetic towards the cause of the synths to the point where now Alfie, he's taken on as his child.
Yeah.
Basically, and I think it was again Harun, played by Ken Watanabe, explains that Alfie was created by Maya from her baby, which is Joshua's baby as well. So literally, Alfie is the synth version of Joshua's unborn child.
I know.
Yeah. So then that's where the emotional side of the movie comes into it, and the connection for Joshua there, and his whole mission there. So,
like I said, it's basically just black and white.
Yeah. I like how you explain that because you're right. Now, when I think back, it is very either this way or that way, and that's it.
Yeah, but there's more than that about the topic of AI, right? It should be end of only the bipolitic side of the story. Just basically the classic Hollywood style of the US versus the world.
Absolutely. And what I would have loved to do, and maybe they did this on purpose, was maybe invest more into explaining Nimata and the original Nimata, and then how that, we didn't really get to see any sort of background knowledge or story of the original Nimata, which is meant to be the father of Maya, and then when and being a human, and then when he passed, how that might have made a good prequel, for example, or it could have been explored in maybe a sequel or whatever.
Just gonna stretch the movie into 3 hours.
Yeah, it might have had to be. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So again, that's all a bit sort of hearsay, isn't it? What they could have or could not do, and maybe budgeting constraints, and maybe there was no potential for a sequel, or that decision was made quite early on. But again, look, I guess in general, since we've covered the movie, I'll say the acting was actually pretty good. I was impressed with what I saw. Some new faces there, obviously, and some returning, well-known faces. Obviously, Gemma Chan, we've seen her in Immortals and some other movies as well. John David Washington, we've seen in Tenet. He did a very good job there, and obviously Alison Janney has been in quite a few roles. Even Ken Watanabe has been in a few roles that we've seen in previous movies as well. But yeah, look, I was very happy with the acting. No complaints there, really. I think obviously that comes back to the story writing and what they had to play with, what they were given. But with what they've given, obviously I saw real talent there, so I was very happy with the acting side there. How about you?
Yeah, acting is really good, and I would give props to the visual as well. is probably like one of the best like visually depicted sci-fi movie in the recent time, I guess. Yeah, for such scale of movie, I really enjoy it by just watching it. Yeah, and also the soundtrack of the movie. Yeah, props to that. I really enjoy it.
Definitely.
Yeah, they almost make this movie a very poetic approach.
Yeah.
With the music was.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree completely. This movie was visually stunning to watch. It was visually stunning to watch, and then supported by a fantastic soundtrack, choreography, and that just sort of went well. Just with the visuals, CGI cannot fault that at all. It really looked real to me. Very happy with those aspects. So that's obviously going to play a part in our final scores. Did you want to summarize and then give your final score of the movie and the reason why?
Yeah, I'd say it would be a solid 6 for me. Yeah, because apart from all the visual and music that we have been praised of, the story and the plot itself still there's flaws in it. I think like I said, if this movie is making it a 3 hours long movie and try to put more details about the concept of AI and make the story a more well-rounding, it should be a bit better. Yeah, because the whole movie to me is just kind of rushed at all. So that's what I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I was initially thinking of like maybe even 7 territory or even 8, just because of the way it looked and, as you mentioned, like how poetic it looked and the choreography of the music, as well as the stunning visuals of the CGI was probably one of the best I've seen in a very long time. However, unfortunately, like we discussed, the introduction was rushed, didn't really flesh out. I would have liked to see a bit more of the background of how we got to this point. And obviously, I was really disappointed in the ending. Just the fact that it was so rushed. It's like they tried to squeeze in a lot of plot lines and plot directions there, and it just, to me, it didn't really work. Although it was just obvious to me that they were just trying to rush to an ending with the eventuation of the destruction of the Nomad, basically. So unfortunately, as I was going to give it a high score, but I do feel that there are a few negatives that do counteract that. So I'm with you, probably 6. I was in between a 6 and a 7, but yeah, I think this movie, from my point of view, 6 out of 10 would be fair. That's not saying that this movie is necessarily a bad movie, but I wouldn't say it's like an absolute great, perfect movie either. Maybe with a bit more, like you said, detail. If it was like more of a 3-hour movie that actually went into detail at the beginning and the end, and gave a bit more compelling weight to the writing, and I'm sure the actors would have pulled it off fantastically well. And in saying that, there might be a 3-hour or 4-hour cut of this movie, and a lot of that might be released in the future in like a director's cut, or a lot of it ended up on the studio floor, which we've seen in the past, where some movies that are meant to be 4 hours long, it got cut so much that that's why it seems rushed in certain parts. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, look, if there is a 3 or 4 hour director's cut of this movie, my rating could potentially go up to 7 or 8. So yeah, I don't want to say that this is a bad movie, but if there is a bit more film on the cutting room floor, and they might potentially release a 3 or 4 hour director's cut of this movie that explains and in depth what we wanted to see in the introduction and the final acts, definitely this movie would then go up to, from a 6, definitely into 7, 8 territory, I believe. Maybe surprising me up to a 9 even, but it just looked amazing, visuals, and the music was fantastic. But yeah, from what the theatrical release, 6 out of 10 for sure.
True.
Yeah.
Yep. So there goes our rating.
Yep. So that's our final rating. I think we'll end it here. Thanks for joining me again, Eric. I really appreciate it. And so that was our review of The Creator. Thanks for listening. My name is Shaq.
And I'm Eric.
And thanks, Eric, again. And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.